Any program in management inevitably brings up the topic of leadership. We've been studying leadership for a long time. Psychologists, for example, spent years looking at the characteristics of great leaders. What they've been trying to find out is, what is it about A, the great leader, that allows him or her to influence the Bs, the followers? Is it the leader's height, weight, intelligence, physical characteristics? What was it about Napoleon Bonaparte? We know, for example, he was about 5'2", 38 short uniform, brown eyes. Julius Caesar, 5'5", size 40 regular toga, brown eyes. Was it brown eyes, or was it something else that allowed a leader to influence a bunch of bees or followers during a particular situation, at a particular moment in time? I studied under one of the great men in social psychology. His name was Ralph Stogdill. Dr. Stogdill was the first one to do this. The first one to point out that there's a relationship between the A's and the B's, the leaders and the followers, that it's an interactive process. I left the military to do my doctoral work under him because I'm fascinated with this topic of leadership. When I arrived at the university, I knelt at his feet and I said, "Professor Stogdill, what is leadership?" He looked down at me and he said, "My son, leadership is the process of influencing an organized group in its efforts towards goal setting and goal achievement." And I said, "What? For this I'm going to spend 3 years?" And he said, "My son, again, leadership is the process of influencing an organized group in its efforts towards goal setting and goal achievement." It's a process. It's dynamic. It took me 3 years to figure out what he was talking about. What I now realize is what he was talking about was leadership is a halo. Leadership is kind of like a donut. It floats over individual members of a group who at different times are able to influence the group more than others. Right now in this discussion, I've got the halo. I'm influencing the activities of your organized group probably more than you are. But the trouble with leadership, leadership as a halo, leadership as a donut, is I can lose my donut any time. You can shut off the machine. Actually, the followers determine who has the halo. The followers determine whether or not they will be led by someone. The trouble with leadership and focusing only on leadership is that the situation can change. If we were together in the same room, I've got the halo. I'm influencing the activities of this organized group in our efforts towards goal setting and goal achievement, and the room suddenly filled up with smoke. I guarantee you everyone would look at me for direction and for structure. What you might see is this. Here I am, frozen in fear to this thing. Are you going to let me keep my halo? Oh no, someone in the back is going to say, "This way, follow me." And we're all going to follow him or her. With a little luck, if I'm still frozen, 2 of you will take this and me with you on the way out. When situations change, halos can change. Followers may determine that there's a better person that they want holding that halo. Well, as a manager, you can't wait for the right moment and the right situation. You would need something that helps solidify your authority over a particular work group all the time. What you bring to the situation is power. Bases of social power. I was trying to explain the concept to some of my graduate students recently, and I walked into class and I said to somebody, "Tell me about the bases of social power, this authority that all managers have." None of my graduate students seemed to be prepared. I asked a few, and then I finally said, "Look, you're not prepared. I'm not going to waste my time with you. Therefore, I'm giving you an exam on Monday morning on 300 pages of reading. Be prepared. Goodbye." And I left. I popped back in and said, "Are you going to do it? Are you going to study for this exam?" You could mentally hear them ripping up hockey tickets and canceling dates. And they said, "Yeah, we're going to do it." And I said, "Why? Why are you going to do what I tell you to do? You're obviously demoralized. How's morale?" They said, "Rotten." "Why are you going to study for the exam?" I asked. And then it was easy to teach them about the basis of social power. You see, I had them by the exam. I asked them, for example, how many of you are going to study for this examination that you don't want to take? Because I can give you an A. I can reward you. Because as your boss, I have reward power. And 2 or 3 of the A students said, "Right, teach. We're going to study so we can demonstrate how smart we are." And then I said, how many of you are going to study for this exam? Because if you don't study for the exam and you fail it, you can kiss this required course goodbye. I can punish you. I have coercive power. And a lot of the students said, "Right, we're going to study for the exam." Then I asked, is anyone going to study for the exam because I told you to, because you think that I am an expert? One of the students said, if we thought you were an expert, maybe we would. I recorded his name. And then I asked, is anyone going to study for the exam because perhaps if I don't have expert power, I have referent power? And your professor's modestly the star of stage, screen, and videotapes. And one of the women in the front row went, what? She went like this. I didn't have her either. And finally I said, if it isn't reward power, coercive power, or expert power, or referent power, if I have some of those for some of you, how many of you are going to study for the exam because I'm the professor and you're the student, and that's the name of the game? That I have legitimate power. At this moment, at this time, it's just the way it is. And everybody nodded. Everybody understood that. Think of the situations in your life where somebody has influenced power over you, somebody you didn't like, but by gosh, they made you jump through hoops. I remember when I was a cadet. Before I went into the military, I went to training for 14 weeks. I arrived at this particular camp, and they thrust us into a barracks late in the evening, brand new uniforms, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, the lights went on. Music sounded, and they said, everybody out. We started to grab the new uniforms, and they said, no, out. 35 young men ran out of the barracks into the darkness, onto the wet grass, and there we saw, in a halo of light from the barracks, an apparition, a sergeant, with shiny, creased fatigues and boots and round hat and a little swagger stick. And he said something to us that I will never forget. I heard later it was old Army kind of stuff. He said to 35 young men, from now on, gentlemen, when I yells fall in, I want to see a great cloud of dust. This was wet grass we were standing on. When I yells eyes are right, I want to hear those eyeballs click. When I yells bout face, I want to smell that rubber burn. Bare feet. We were terrified of this guy. One person in the front made the mistake of saying, yes, sir. And this old sergeant said, don't you ever call me sir. He put a bucket on our heads and he beat it for weeks. He was wonderful at what he did. And by gosh, at the end of our time together, he had 35 soldiers standing there, not 35 sheep. And as newly commissioned officers, the tradition is that you pay $1 to the first enlisted man who salutes you. And everybody wanted to pay their $1 to this sergeant. He was magnificent in what he did. He had legitimate power. But as a brand new second lieutenant with shiny gold bars, if he came at me with his bucket and his stick, I would have walked up one side of him and down the other. His moment, his golden moment of legitimate power had passed. So it's not just leadership and it's not just bossship that we're looking for. It's a combination of both. Yes, you'd like to have those characteristics of the great leaders. Yes, we know that you have bossship, the authority and the power to act. What we're focusing in on is this dimension right here, the dimension where the two overlap, where we bring both elements together. One writer called this post-heroic leadership, the recognition that you can't do it alone, the recognition that you need the followers as much as you need your own personal characteristics. What we're going to get at is that any boss today has to bring both elements together. And the reason you have to do that, the reason you need your people, is that you're stuck with what they're doing. Right now, you're watching this program. You're going to be in here for a couple of hours. Meanwhile, back at your shop, the people who work for you are making decisions, are getting the work done. Do you want to stop and find out what they're doing to you now? In post-heroic leadership, what we're really saying is that managers today have got to understand that they must participate with their people in accomplishing organizational goals. It's not just managing folks anymore. It's managing with our folks. And as we'll see, the process of leadership and management, this combination that we're talking about, is situationally oriented. There are ways of managing that are appropriate at particular times. Situations may drive different styles of management. We're going to explore those. But there's something that the leader-manager must have that transcends the situation. And that's a focus on excellence. It's a focus on quality. It's a focus on vision. I speak to the people who work for you figuratively all the time. I'm in all kinds of organizations asking, what language does management speak? Do you think your people say that you speak vision and quality and excellence? No. Most of the time what they say is they speak budgets, they speak finance. They're the people who say, gotcha. They're the obstacles to achieving productivity and quality, not facilitators. What are you doing now that keeps you so busy all day long that directly relates to getting the washout? How much of what you do all day long, the letters, the dictation, the meetings, could really be done by a 16-year-old part-time high school kid? Some kid who has none of your experience and none of your background. A famous psychologist by the name of B.F. Skinner did a study of a pigeon's behavior that I think has a lot of relationship to what I'm trying to say. Because I wonder how many of you act every day like Skinner's pigeon did. In this classic study, he starved a pigeon for 3 days, put the pigeon into a box, and he wanted to see what would happen after he started to feed it. He had a little food pellet device that would drop pellets in automatically. And as I tell you about the pigeon, keep in mind there's very little difference between Skinner's pigeon and its box and the boxes that you and I work in every day. The environment causes behavior. After 3 days, Skinner turned on the machine, the first pellet dropped out. It just happened that when the machine went on, the pigeon happened to be standing in this corner. After 3 days, the pigeon was starving. It ran over, gobbled up the first pellet, and waited for more food. To show you how smart a pigeon is, it waited by the chute for more food to come out. When nothing happened, because the pellets were coming out at random intervals, the pigeon went back to this corner of the cage and refused to move from the corner. Obviously, it suspected that the corner must be making the pellets come out, so it didn't budge. It sat there. After a while, another pellet did come out. Now it was reinforced. It didn't wait at all this time. It just ran over and ran right back, convinced the corner is making that pellet come out. Long period of time went by. Nothing happened. The pigeon happened to be standing on one leg in the corner. At that moment, another pellet dropped out. The pigeon ran over, ran back, picked up one leg, and stood there. Convinced, I guess, that the leg in the corner were now making pellets come out. Pigeons can do this forever. It sat there for a long time. It got reinforced 2 or 3 times, and now we have classic pictures of this pigeon on one leg in the corner. Nothing happened. Another pellet dropped out just when the pigeon was cleaning its beak on the side of the cage. The pigeon ran over, ran back, picked up one leg, and started going like this. Skinner calls this the superstitious dance. And I ask, how much of what you do all day long is nothing more than this? Doesn't have anything to do with getting pellets or the washout with the people who work for you. The model of management that we're talking about is a proactive model. We're talking about managers who are very involved in a dynamic relationship with the people who work with them. This is not laissez-faire management we'll be discussing. It's not, let's see what they do to me today. Rather, we're talking about being very involved, making it happen together. Let's take some time now and take a look at different situations and appropriate ways for managing within those situations.